My name is Amelia Rhodes, and I'm 29 years old. If you had asked me just a year ago what my life looked like, I would have smiled and told you it was everything I had ever dreamed of. A stable career, a man I believed was my forever, and a wedding on the horizon that felt like the final piece of a carefully constructed puzzle. Looking back now, I see the cracks were already there. But in those moments, I was too blinded by love, or perhaps by hope, to notice how deep they ran. It was a Saturday morning, 3 months before the wedding. The kind of morning that tricks you into believing life is perfect. The sunlight spilled through the sheer curtains in our apartment, painting the walls with golden warmth. I remember Jason, my fiancé, sitting at the small kitchen table, flipping through floral arrangement samples with an exaggerated seriousness that made me laugh. I leaned over his shoulder, pointing at a design with ivory roses and eucalyptus. "This one," I said. "It feels timeless, don't you think?" He chuckled and nodded, scribbling a note in his messy handwriting. "If it makes you smile like that, then yes, timeless it is." For a fleeting moment, it felt like we were invincible. I slipped into the chair across from him, sipping my coffee, watching him with that peculiar mixture of affection and gratitude. For 7 years, I had been the rock in our relationship. While Jason explored different jobs, dabbled in passions, and tried to find himself, I worked. I climbed the corporate ladder, secured the apartment we shared, paid for most of our groceries, and even helped cover his lingering student loans. I never thought of it as a burden. It was a partnership. My stability allowed him space to chase his dreams and his energy. His charm brought color into my carefully organized world. When he told me he wanted to start his own design business, I didn't hesitate. I drafted his business plan with him, gave him a loan, and even handled some of the marketing late at night after my own job left me exhausted. I did it because I believed in him, but more than that, I loved him. That morning, when we finalized the floral arrangements, Jason leaned back with a rare, unguarded laugh. He tugged me onto the couch, pulled me into his lap, and kissed the side of my forehead. "Can you believe it, Leah?" He whispered his nickname for me. "We're really doing this. We're going to be husband and wife." I remember that warmth spreading through me so fierce it nearly hurt. I thought, this is it. This is the life I've been building toward. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that life has a cruel way of rewriting itself when you least expect it. The weeks rolled by, and though our wedding plans accelerated, something in Jason shifted. The laughter we once shared was thinner, almost forced. Our comfortable silences, once so full of unspoken understanding, turned brittle. He was always on his phone, his screen glowing late into the night. When I asked what he was doing, he would smile too quickly and say, "Just wedding stuff, Leah. Don't worry about it." I told myself not to press. He was probably stressed, overwhelmed with preparations. Still, the unease tugged at me like a loose thread, small but impossible to ignore. And then Maya returned. Maya had been my closest friend since childhood, though our paths had diverged after college. She was the kind of person who commanded a room the moment she entered, charismatic, fearless, reckless, in ways I never dared to be. When she heard about my wedding, she moved back to town. At first, I was thrilled. It felt poetic, my best friend from childhood standing beside me on the most important day of my life. But almost immediately, she and Jason clicked in a way that made my chest tighten. Maya offered to help with the wedding preparations, picking up favors, checking out venues, meeting with the DJ, things Jason eagerly agreed to. Every time I suggested joining them, Jason would laugh, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Babe, you've been working yourself into the ground. Let us handle this one. You deserve a break." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe Maya was just being her usual helpful self. After all, this was my best friend and my fiancé. What reason did I have not to trust them? But trust isn't a fortress. It's a fragile glass house, and once a crack forms, it spreads until everything shatters. I noticed the way Jason's mood lifted after being with Maya, the way he'd laugh at texts on his phone, tucking it away when I leaned too close. The way their names, Jason and Maya, started to twine together in conversations I wasn't a part of. One night as we folded invitations together, Jason casually remarked, "You know, Maya's so fearless. She takes risks, never hesitates. That's probably why people admire her so much." I froze the invitation, half folded in my hands. The words were meant as a simple observation, but beneath them was something sharp, a comparison. A reminder that I was not fearless, not reckless, not thrilling in the way Maya was. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile, but inside, a cold dread rooted itself in my chest. For years, I had been the provider, the anchor. And for the first time, I wondered if Jason was starting to see that not as love, but as boredom. Still, I told myself it was stress. The wedding was approaching. Nerves made people act strangely. He chose me. I repeated like a mantra. He asked me to marry him. He wants this life with me. But as I lay awake at night, listening to the glow of his phone screen in the dark, I couldn't shake the sense that the life I thought I was building was already slipping away. That was the last truly good memory I had before everything began to unravel. At the time, I didn't know it was the beginning of the end. But sometimes endings arrive disguised as ordinary days. If the months leading up to a wedding are supposed to be the happiest in a couple's life, ours felt strangely hollow. At first, I blamed myself. I told myself maybe I'd poured so much of my energy into work that I'd lost sight of Jason. That maybe if I just tried a little harder, leaned in a little more, I could fix the distance quietly widening between us. But love isn't supposed to feel like constant repair work. Jason began spending more time with Maya under the guise of helping with the wedding. They picked out linens, negotiated with the DJ, even stopped by the caterer together. The first time he mentioned it, I laughed, assuming he was joking. "You and Maya," I teased. "She doesn't even like dessert. How's she supposed to taste test our cake?" Jason smiled a little too quickly. "That's the point. She's unbiased. And you've been so stressed lately, I didn't want to drag you along for every little errand. Let us handle it. You need to focus on work." I tried to tell myself he meant well, that he was protecting me, giving me space to breathe. But every time I came home from the office and saw him on the couch, grinning at his phone, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. One night he came in late. I was already in bed, the soft hum of the city outside my window. He slipped out of his shoes and whispered, "Sorry, babe." Maya and I got caught up talking with the DJ. Time flew. He smelled faintly of perfume, something light floral, not mine. I rolled onto my side, staring at the wall. My heart wanted to ask the question burning on my tongue. "Are you falling for her?" But my pride swallowed it. Instead, I forced a smile and whispered, "It's fine. We're almost there. Just 2 months left." Jason kissed my cheek and climbed into bed, already drifting off. Meanwhile, I lay awake, counting the cracks spreading silently through the glass house of our life. There were small tells, moments that should have raised alarms, but I silenced them. Jason's sentences began starting with "Maya thinks," or "Maya said," as though she'd become the authority on every decision. He laughed harder at her jokes than he did at mine. And when I suggested we spend an evening together, just us, he would sigh, guilt threading through his voice. "Soon, Leah. Once all the wedding chaos is over, I promise we'll have our time." I nodded, but each excuse felt like another inch of space growing between us. The worst part wasn't Jason, it was Maya. I wanted to believe she was still my friend, the girl who used to sneak out of class with me to buy milkshakes, the girl who swore we'd stand in each other's weddings no matter what. But the way she looked at Jason sometimes, the way her laughter lingered in the air after he spoke, felt wrong, too intimate. At a dress fitting, I caught her phone buzzing with his name flashing on the screen. She silenced it quickly, her cheeks flushed. "Jason just wanted to confirm the DJ," she said too fast. I forced myself to smile, but something inside me cracked. One evening, we were folding place cards at the table. Jason scrolled through his phone while I carefully tied ribbons around the stacks. "You know," he said casually, not looking up Maya's incredible. "She just goes after what she wants. No hesitation. That's why people respect her. She's a leader." I froze the ribbon slipping from my fingers. I knew what he meant. It wasn't just admiration, it was comparison. A sharp pang stabbed through me. I'd always been steady, grounded, deliberate. The anchor in chaos. But suddenly it felt like those very qualities, the ones that had built our life, the ones that made me sacrifice and support him, were nothing more than flaws in his eyes. I forced a smile, hiding the storm brewing inside me. "That's true," I said softly, my throat tight. Jason didn't notice. He was too busy laughing at a message on his phone. At work, I found myself distracted, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into nothing. My coworkers asked if I was okay, and I plastered on my brightest smile. Wedding stress. I lied. But at home, silence became unbearable. Jason stayed out later. His phone buzzed with messages he never explained. And when I finally asked him one night, his answer was sharp defensive. "God, Leah, it's just Maya. Stop being so paranoid." Paranoid. The word stung worse than any admission could have. It was the kind of word people use to gaslight, to twist suspicion into shame. I nodded quickly, retreating into myself. The last thing I wanted was to become the needy fiancé who drove him further away. Still, I clung to hope. We had 7 years together. He proposed. He said he loved me. Surely these doubts were nothing more than the jitters people whispered about in hushed tones. He chose me, I reminded myself again and again. But late at night, as I stared at the glow of his phone lighting up his face, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that I was already losing him. And worse, I couldn't tell if he was already gone. Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in like a shadow at the edge of your vision. Quiet, patient, waiting for the moment you finally dare to look straight at it. I wasn't ready to look yet, but the shadow was already in the room with us. It was a Tuesday evening, just 2 days before the wedding. Our apartment looked like a florist's workshop collided with a liquor store. Boxes lined the floor, half-empty champagne bottles leaned against stacks of seating charts, and the sweet, heavy scent of lilies clung to the air. What was supposed to feel festive now felt suffocating. I sat at the dining table, threading ivory ribbons through place cards with methodical precision, trying to distract myself from the gnawing unease that had been building for weeks. Each card was a small promise, 2 names, written in careful calligraphy, a future gathering of family and friends. I wanted to believe those promises still meant something. Jason stepped in from the balcony. His shoulders were stiff, his arms crossed tightly across his chest. He didn't sit down, didn't smile. He just stood there staring at the chaos around us, with an expression that sent a cold shiver down my spine. I looked up and forced a smile. Almost done. Just a few more cards and we'll be ready to... We need to talk. His voice was flat, detached. The ribbon slipped from my fingers. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What's wrong? Did something fall through with the caterers? He shook his head slowly. His eyes, once so warm, were blank. It's not the caterers. I swallowed. Then what is it? He drew a sharp breath, then exhaled like he'd rehearsed the line. Amelia, I can't marry you. The world tilted. My chest seized, but my body didn't move. For a moment, I waited for the punchline, for him to smirk, for the cruel joke to end. But his face stayed cold, unflinching. I don't understand, I whispered. Jason, the wedding is in 2 days. He ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. I've been talking to Maya a lot, and I've realized something. The truth is, I've never really been in love with you. The words landed like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. 7 years of sacrifice, of late nights, drafting business plans, of pouring my paycheck into building his dreams, shattered in an instant. I gripped the edge of the till, my knuckles white. What are you saying? Jason finally met my eyes, his gaze colder than I'd ever seen it. You're amazing, Amelia. You're stable, kind, reliable, but you're not what I need. I need passion, excitement, someone who pushes boundaries. Maya understands that. She makes me feel alive in a way I've never felt with you. My stomach twisted. Maya. The name tasted like ash on my tongue. My best friend? I asked, my voice trembling. You're leaving me for Maya. For the briefest moment, I thought I saw guilt flicker across his face, but then his lips curved into the faintest smug smile. She knows what she wants. She takes risks. She's not afraid of anything. That's the kind of partner I need beside me. Not safety, not routine. The way he said those words, safety, routine, made them sound like curses, as if my stability, the very thing that had carried us for years, was now a chain around his neck. I felt tears sting at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him, not when he wanted me to break. I forced my voice to stay steady. So all of this, the flowers, the plans, the vows, it was never real to you. He shrugged, casual, almost cruel. It was nice, but it's not love, not the way it should be. For a long, heavy moment, silence hung between us. My whole world was collapsing, yet some strange calm settled over me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the realization that begging wouldn't change a thing. I straightened in my chair, my hand still on the stack of place cards. My voice, when it came, surprised me with its quiet strength. All right. Jason blinked, startled. All right, that's it. I gathered the cards into a neat pile and set them gently in a box. If this is what you want, then I won't stand in your way. I'll be out by tomorrow morning. His brows furrowed. He'd expected rage, pleading, anything but this. Amelia, no. I stood meeting his eyes with a clarity I didn't know I had in me. You've made your choice, and in a way, you've done me a favor. You freed me from a lie I didn't even know I was living. For the first time that night, Jason looked unsettled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I walked to the bedroom, pulled a duffel bag from the closet, and began folding my clothes with mechanical precision. He hovered in the doorway, guilt softening his voice. Leah, are you okay? I didn't look up. I will be. He shifted awkward. I'm sorry. I know this is a lot. This isn't about me not being enough, I said, finally turning to face him. This is about you needing more than anyone could give you, and someday you'll realize that's not passion, it's selfishness. His face paled, but I didn't stay to watch. I zipped the bag and returned to the living room, setting the key to our apartment on the counter. Goodbye, Jason. I spent that night on the couch, staring at the ceiling while he moved quietly in the other room. There were no tears, no shouting. Just the steady beat of my own heart reminding me I was still alive, even if the life I'd built was gone. By morning, I carried my bag out the door. I didn't look back. The silence that followed was both devastating and liberating. Devastating because the man I loved had chosen betrayal over honesty. Liberating because I knew deep down I hadn't lost him. I'd lost an illusion. And sometimes losing an illusion is the first step to finding yourself. When I closed the door behind me that morning, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, I thought the silence would crush me. 7 years of my life had just ended with a sentence. A wedding dismantled, a future erased. The air outside was sharp, almost mocking in its freshness. People hurried down the street, sipping coffee, talking on phones, laughing, as though the world hadn't just split open inside me. I wanted to scream at them, "Don't you see my life is over?" But instead I kept walking. I moved into a small apartment across town, a one-bedroom with creaking floors and walls, thin enough to hear the neighbor's television through. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No ghosts of wedding flowers, no scent of lilies, no shared keys, resting like accusations on the counter. The first nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying Jason's words like a cruel tape on loop. I've never really loved you. Maya makes me feel alive. There were no tears, not at first. Just a hollow ache, grief without release. My phone buzzed constantly, Jason, Maya, mutual friends, even his mother. I turned the screen face down, each vibration like a gnat I refused to swat. I didn't block them yet, not because I wanted to read the messages, but because I wanted the sound of them begging to remind me, you did this, Jason, not me. Eventually I did block them. Him, her, all of them. Silence fell, and though it was suffocating at first, it slowly began to feel like freedom. I threw myself into work. If love had betrayed me, then maybe work could save me. I arrived early, stayed late, buried myself in projects until the numbers blurred and my body ached. My manager noticed, and within 6 months I was promoted. It wasn't just the hours, it was the fire. Every ounce of energy I had, once poured into Jason's dreams, was now mine. The business plan I'd once written for him, I adapted the format to my own proposals, pushing new initiatives at work. The marketing tricks I'd stayed up late doing for his side hustle, I used them to make my team stand out. Bit by bit, I built something of my own, something no one could take away from me. Still, the ghosts lingered. Some nights, I'd walk past bridal shops, their windows filled with white gowns glowing under the fluorescent lights. My chest would tighten, my breath catch. For a heartbeat, I'd imagine myself in one lace, trailing behind flowers in hand, Jason's smile waiting at the end of the aisle. Then I'd blink and the image would vanish, replaced by the memory of his cold, detached face, the way he'd said, "I've never loved you." I'd keep walking, shoulders squared, forcing each step until the ache dulled. It wasn't all bleak. There were moments small, unexpected, where light pierced the fog. An old coworker invited me to a trivia night, and I laughed harder than I had in months. A stranger complimented my jacket on the subway, and I caught myself smiling the rest of the ride. I started buying flowers for myself. Bright sunflowers, cheerful tulips. I set them in the window of my tiny apartment, reclaiming the beauty of blooms without letting them remind me of loss. And slowly, the silence no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like space. Space to breathe, to rebuild, to rediscover who I was without being Jason's anchor. A year passed. On the anniversary of what would have been my wedding day, I lit a candle in my apartment, not for mourning, but for release. I whispered into the flickering light, "I loved you once, and I let you go. That will be the last gift I ever give you." And with that, I blew it out. By then, Jason and Maya were little more than names. I avoided in conversations ghosts whispered about by mutual friends I no longer kept in close touch. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. But the universe has a way of delivering information whether you want it or not. One afternoon over coffee with an old college friend, I heard it. The first crack in their picture-perfect fantasy. "Hey," my friend said cautiously, eyes flicking to mine. "I heard about Jason. Is it true things didn't work out with Maya?" I stirred my coffee slowly, keeping my face neutral. "I wouldn't know. We don't speak." She hesitated. "Well, apparently it's bad. Really bad." I nodded politely, changing the subject. But her words lingered long after I left the cafe. For the first time in months, curiosity stirred in me. Not longing, not hope, just a quiet, steady question. What happens when two people build a future on betrayal? I didn't have to wait long for the answer. Rumors have a way of finding you even when you swear you don't care. At first, the news came in fragments like whispers carried by the wind. A former coworker mentioned seeing Maya alone at a cafe, looking frazzled. A mutual acquaintance casually dropped that Jason's business wasn't going as planned. Each tidbit felt like a breadcrumb leading to a feast of poetic justice. I never asked for details, but the details came anyway. Maya had always thrived on risk. She lived for it, the thrill of diving headfirst without checking if the water was shallow. Jason once admired that recklessness, called it passion drive leadership. But admiration has a short shelf life when bills start piling up. Her latest venture, some half-baked luxury event startup, had already drained the savings Jason brought into their relationship. Worse, she convinced him to co-sign loans, promising, "This time it'll take off. We'll be unstoppable." But instead of unstoppable, they became immovable, crushed under the weight of debt. One scheme collapsed after another. Creditors began circling. Lawsuits loomed. And through it all, Maya did what she'd always done best. She looked out for herself. The story I eventually pieced together painted a clear picture. Jason, the man who once told me I was too safe, too boring, had gambled everything on chaos. He left stability for fireworks and discovered fireworks burn out fast, leaving nothing but smoke and ash. When the lawsuits hit, Maya vanished. No dramatic farewell, no confrontation. She simply packed her things, deleted her accounts, and disappeared. Jason was left behind holding the bag quite literally of debt with his name stamped all over it. The irony was almost too perfect. I should have felt vindicated, and in a way I did. Nights when I sat in my apartment sipping wine after a long day at work, I'd allow myself the smallest smile. Karma doesn't always come when you want it to, but sometimes it arrives right on schedule, gift-wrapped in poetic symmetry. But alongside the satisfaction was something else, a cold, detached pity. Because even as I reveled in the justice of it all, I couldn't ignore the truth. Jason's downfall wasn't just bad luck, it was a reflection of the man he'd become, or perhaps the man he always was, hidden beneath the comfort I provided for so long. A year earlier, I would have rushed to fix it. I would have offered money advice, long nights of planning spreadsheets just to prop him up again. That's who I was then, the rock, the caretaker, the steady ground he trampled without hesitation. But that Amelia was gone. The silence I'd cultivated wasn't just protection, it was transformation. And now hearing of his ruin, I felt nothing but distance. One evening, Sarah, a mutual friend who had always leaned more toward Jason's side, called me out of the blue. "Amelia," she said, her voice low, careful, "I know you don't want to hear about him, but Jason's in trouble. It's bad. He's drowning." I pressed the phone to my ear, my expression unreadable. "That's unfortunate," I said evenly. There was a pause, as if she expected me to crack, to show even a flicker of the woman I once was. Finally, she whispered, "I think he really regrets what he did to you." I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. Regret doesn't erase choices. The irony deepened weeks later when I bumped into an old college friend at the grocery store. She leaned across the cart, eyes wide with gossip. "Did you hear Maya left town? No one knows where she is. Jason's been begging around trying to get people to invest in his new idea, but..." She lowered her voice. "No one trusts him anymore. He's a mess." I nodded politely, pretending it was casual news, though inside I felt the sharp sting of satisfaction. This was the man who told me I was boring, who discarded my loyalty for borrowed excitement. And now the excitement had abandoned him too. At night in the quiet of my apartment, I thought back to the version of me who had folded invitations at a dining table holding back tears while Jason told me he'd never loved me. That woman had believed she'd lost everything. But sitting there now, steady in my career, secure in myself, I realized it was Jason who had lost everything. Not just me, not just the life we could have built, but the very stability he had mocked, the safety net he assumed would always be there when he fell. Without me, he had nothing to catch him. The final piece of news came from Sarah again. She messaged me late one night. Maya drained his accounts. He's living with his parents again. The business is gone. He's completely alone. I stared at the words on my screen, my lips curving into a quiet, almost bittersweet smile. Alone. Exactly as he'd left me. For months, I heard nothing more. I thought maybe finally the universe had tied the bow on this twisted gift of closure. But then one evening, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year. Jason. Blocked, yes, but through an unknown number this time. The first message, "Hey Amelia, please, just hear me out." Then another, "I'm sorry, I was wrong about everything." And another, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't see it then, but I do now." I set the phone down on the counter, my chest calm, my pulse steady. The shadows that had once haunted me were gone. All that was left was a choice. To answer, or to let silence be my reply. I chose silence. But Jason, he wasn't done yet. The first text was easy to ignore. "Hey Amelia, please, just hear me out." The number was unfamiliar, but I knew immediately who it was. The clipped way he wrote my name, no nickname, no warmth. Just a plea disguised as formality. I set the phone down without replying. Silence was my answer. The next day, another message arrived. "I'm sorry, I was wrong about everything." Then another just hours later. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't see it then, but I do now." I watched the words appear like cracks in the screen. Once upon a time, they would have shattered me. Now they felt foreign, like a language I no longer spoke. For 7 years, I had been his anchor, his caretaker, his safety net. But I had burned that role to ashes the moment I walked away. And no apology, no neatly typed confession could rebuild it. When silence didn't work, he escalated. Voicemails this time, his voice trembling, raw, pleading. "Amelia, please. I know I don't deserve it, but just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to explain." I deleted each one without listening all the way through. Then came the longer messages. Half-truths disguised as clarity. Maya wasn't who I thought she was. She destroyed me, lied to me, used me. You were right about her. Then self-pity. My parents don't even want me here. Everyone's turned their back on me. I don't know what to do. And finally, the ones meant to sting. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you're the only person who ever believed in me. Please, I need you." But I had learned something in the silence of my new life. Desperation isn't love, it's survival. He didn't want me. He wanted the version of me who had always fixed his messes, who had written his business plans, paid his debts, cleaned up his chaos. That version was gone. When Jason realized I wouldn't bite, he turned to others. First, his mother. One evening, my phone lit up with her name. For a moment, my chest tightened, because I had always liked her. She'd treated me like family, welcomed me with open arms. Her voice was soft, pleading. "Amelia, honey, please talk to him. He's not well. You were always so good to him. If anyone can help him, it's you." My throat ached, but I forced my words steady. "With respect, I'm not the right person anymore. He made that choice." Her silence on the other end was heavy, disappointed, but she didn't push further. I hung up, staring at the phone with trembling hands. Even his mother couldn't make me falter. Next, it was mutual friends. A text from David Dude. "He's a mess. I told him not to screw with you, but he didn't listen. He thought you'd always be there to catch him when he fell. Please, just talk to him." I stared at the words, then typed a single reply. "Good luck with that." Then deleted his number too. The strangest part wasn't Jason's begging. It was how familiar it all felt. The tone of his texts, the cadence of his calls. It was the same Jason I'd known for years. Always reaching, always needing, always pulling me into the quicksand of his mistakes. Only this time I wasn't sinking with him. I was watching from solid ground. And the view was clearer than it had ever been. Weeks passed. His messages turned frantic. "Amelia, please just tell me you hate me. Anything. I can't take this silence. Leah, remember our apartment. Remember the mornings with coffee. Please just tell me it wasn't all fake. I'll do anything. Therapy. Pay you back. Start over. Just don't shut me out." But I did shut him out. Every time. Not out of cruelty, but because silence was the only answer that fit. Then one afternoon, he crossed the line I knew he eventually would. He showed up. I was leaving work, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby, when I saw him standing outside. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was unkempt, his clothes rumpled, his eyes hollow. The smug man who once called me boring was gone. In his place stood someone smaller, broken. "Amelia," he breathed, stepping forward. His voice cracked. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I tightened my grip on my bag, my expression cool. I don't have 5 minutes for you. He flinched as if the words themselves cut him. Please, just listen. Maya ruined me. She left me with nothing. I see it now, you were the one. You were always the one. I was blind. I was stupid. Please give me another chance. For a moment, I just looked at him, not with rage, not with pity, just clarity. He wasn't begging for me. He was begging for the safety I once gave him, and that was gone forever. Jason, I said softly, almost kindly, you don't need me. You need to learn how to stand on your own. And until you do, you'll keep destroying anyone who tries to save you. Tears welled in his eyes. His hand reached out, trembling as if to touch my arm. I stepped back. Goodbye, Jason. And with that, I walked past him out into the evening air, my heart steady, my stride unbroken. Behind me, I could feel his desperation collapse into silence. The same silence I had chosen all along. I thought the scene outside my office would be the end. Jason crumbling in front of me, begging with hollow eyes. It felt like the last act of a tragedy I no longer belonged to. But I should have known better. Jason was nothing, if not persistent. It started with silence after our encounter, and for a brief moment, I believed he had finally let go. Weeks passed without a message, and the peace was intoxicating. I buried myself in work, filled my evenings with quiet rituals, reading, cooking, watering the flowers I always kept by my window. But peace with Jason was always temporary. One Friday afternoon, as I was locking up my office, I heard my name, Amelia. I turned, and there he was again, not as disheveled as before, but still carrying the air of someone trying and failing to hold himself together. His suit was pressed, but it hung on him as though he'd lost too much weight. His smile was practiced brittle. I sighed, my keys still in my hand. Jason, what are you doing here? He stepped closer, too close, his voice soft but urgent. I needed to see you. Please. 5 minutes, that's all. His words echoed the last time we'd met, but this time there was something sharper in them. Desperation threaded with arrogance, as though he believed persistence itself would win me back. I squared my shoulders. Fine. 5 minutes. Say what you came to say. We sat on a bench outside the office building, the city buzzing around us, while Jason fumbled for words. I know I destroyed everything, he began, wringing his hands. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Amelia, Maya was a mistake. She ruined me. She took everything. And when I look at you now, successful, calm, happy, I realize you were what I needed all along. You were always the one. I stared at him, my expression unreadable. Once those words would have cracked me open. Once I would have clung to them like a drowning woman to driftwood. But now they slid off me like water against stone. I tilted my head slightly, my voice steady. Do you remember what you told me, Jason? 2 days before our wedding. He blinked, caught off guard. Amelia. No. My voice sharpened, slicing through his excuse. You looked me in the eye and told me you'd never loved me. You called me safe, routine, boring. You said you needed passion and risks, and you found it in Maya, exactly what you wanted. He flinched, his face paling. I was wrong. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know. You knew, I interrupted, my tone icy calm. You knew enough to dismantle 7 years in one breath. You knew enough to humiliate me, discard me, replace me with my own best friend. Don't pretend it was confusion. It was choice, your choice. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The weight of my words seemed to press him down into the bench. For a long moment, I simply studied him. The man who once carried himself with smug confidence, who once believed he could never fall, now trembling under the reflection of his own cruelty. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locking with his. You said I wasn't what you needed. And you were right. I'm not what you need. But here's the difference, Jason. You're not what I need either. Not anymore. Not ever again. Tears welled in his eyes, his voice breaking. Amelia, please, don't say that. I can change. I'll do anything. Therapy work, whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to prove it. I sat back, a faint smile tugging at my lips, not out of amusement, but out of clarity. You don't need to prove anything to me, I said softly, because I don't care anymore. He froze, the words landing heavier than any insult. Don't you see, I continued. That's the real ending to our story. Not you begging, not me forgiving, not some grand reconciliation. The ending is indifference. You don't matter to me anymore, Jason. Not in the way you once did. Not in any way at all. His face crumpled, his body folding in on itself. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. I stood adjusting the strap of my bag. You got exactly what you said you wanted. Passion, risk, chaos, and it destroyed you. But don't make the mistake of thinking you can crawl back to me now. My life isn't a safety net for your bad decisions." For a long moment, he just sat there staring at the ground, his shoulders shaking. I looked at him one last time, not with anger, not with pity, just with the finality of someone who has truly moved on. "Goodbye, Jason." And then I walked away, the city lights gleaming against the evening sky, each step carrying me further from the wreckage of a life I no longer belonged to. Behind me, Jason remained on that bench, swallowed by the very silence he once forced on me. Only this time it was permanent. The night I walked away from Jason for the last time, I expected to feel a void. 7 years is a long time to carry someone's dreams, to be their foundation, their safety net, their mirror. I thought cutting that tie for good would leave me hollow. But it didn't. It left me lighter. In the weeks that followed, I noticed something I hadn't in years. Silence could be beautiful. The absence of his texts, his calls, his constant needs wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space to think, to breathe, to hear my own voice again without it being drowned out by his. I filled that silence with small rituals. Saturday mornings meant fresh flowers from the corner market. Weeknights became experiments in cooking dishes I'd never tried before, saffron, risotto, spiced lentil stew recipes that once would have intimidated me. Each small act was a quiet rebellion against the version of myself who had lived only to hold someone else up. Work thrived. The promotion I'd earned months earlier became a stepping stone to something bigger, a leadership role that forced me to trust myself in ways I once reserved only for Jason. I wasn't just the stable one anymore. I was decisive, innovative, respected. My coworkers began turning to me for guidance, and for the first time I realized I had always been a leader. I'd just hidden that truth behind someone else's shadow. One evening, as I walked home through the city streets, the golden hour painting everything in warm light, I caught my reflection in a shop window. I stopped staring. The woman looking back at me wasn't the Amelia who once tied ribbons around wedding invitations while her fiancé texted another woman. She wasn't the Amelia who begged herself to believe she was enough. This Amelia was calm, strong, independent. Her shoulders no longer hunched under the weight of someone else's dreams. For the first time, I recognized myself and liked what I saw. Of course, life has a way of testing even the strongest transformations. A few months later, Sarah reached out again. "Jason's not doing well," she said softly over the phone. "He's been trying to start over, but he's lost. He talks about you all the time." I listened silent. "Amelia," she continued, almost pleading, "wouldn't it help him if you just talked to him? Gave him closure." I thought about that word, closure. For Jason, closure would mean me stepping back into the role I had already buried, caretaker fixer, the steady hand to hold his chaos together. But for me, closure had already happened. It happened the moment I looked him in the eye and realized his words no longer had the power to break me. It happened when I chose silence over his cries, indifference over his apologies. It happened when I walked away for the last time and felt lighter, not emptier. "Closure," I said. Finally, my voice calm, "isn't something I can give him. It's something he has to find on his own." Sarah was quiet, then sighed. "I guess you're right." And just like that, I let the last thread of obligation snap. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the day, Jason had ended everything. I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine. The city lights glittered below 1,000 tiny stars mirroring the sky. I thought about where I had been, who I had been, and how far I'd come. Jason had been my first great love, yes, but he had also been my greatest lesson. He taught me that love without respect is hollow. That stability isn't boring, it's strength. That betrayal doesn't define you, it refines you. And most importantly, he taught me that losing someone isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the beginning. I raised my glass to the night air, a private toast only I could hear. "To freedom," I whispered. Not freedom from him, not anymore. Freedom from the version of myself that believed I needed him to be whole. As I set the glass down, my phone buzzed. A message from a coworker. "Dinner tomorrow. There's someone I'd like you to meet." I smiled, slipping the phone into my pocket. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something. But either way, I wasn't afraid anymore. Because whatever came next, I knew this. I was no one's safety net. I was no one's backup plan. I was Amelia Rhodes, and I was free.